Welcome back to CNA938 World Report. I'm Jagruti Dave in Washington. If you ever go for a meal in South Korea, then you will almost certainly be given one dish in particular: kimchi. Koreans absolutely love it, so there's been an angry reaction to claims by some Chinese media that the cherished dish is in fact Chinese. The feud started after the ISO, a global organisation that sets industry standards, announced new regulations for how to make a different fermented Chinese vegetable dish. Bruce Harrison is in Seoul and can tell us more.
Many South Koreans believe China is trying to steal a piece of their culture. Kim Kyung works in the medical industry in Seoul.
되게 유구한 역사를 가지고 있음에도 불구하고 저희의
It's unpleasant for us to see China trying to take our culture and history, even though it has its own long history. It's sad in a way, but I think we're used to this kind of behavior from China.
Kim says there was another issue last month when a Chinese company pulled a new mobile game from its servers. The dress-up game featured a special Korean item, a hanbok. Chinese netizens complained about the special designation, saying the hanbok is traditionally Chinese clothing.
We shouldn't overlook this by saying China will be China. We need to be more interested as citizens and take action, even though I'm not doing anything myself. These days, it's hard to find anything that's not made in China, such as cell phones and other devices.
The latest dispute began last week when the ISO outlined rules for the making, storage, and transportation of a Chinese dish called paochai. But then China's state-run Global Times wrote that the ISO had set an international standard for the kimchi industry led by China. And while paochai is similar to kimchi and is often made with cabbage, its other ingredients vary wildly, as does the fermentation process. Seoul has responded by saying that the ISO made the distinction that its new rules don't apply to kimchi. Cho Jung-eun is the Director of Strategy and Planning at the World Institute of Kimchi.
사실 이런 채소절임 식품은 한국에
Pickled vegetables are not only found in Korea. For example, there is Korean kimchi, Japan's 쯔게모노, Germany's sauerkraut, and China's paochai. But Korean kimchi is different. The other foods are typically pickled in salt, sugar, or vinegar and then eaten. Korean kimchi is the only food pickled with salt and then fermented again with garlic, ginger, and red pepper.
Ms. Cho says her institute issued a press release explaining that kimchi and paochai are very different foods, and the Chinese media claims are totally false. One commenter on the Korean portal Naver said the Chinese don't even have kimchi refrigerators. In South Korea, corporations like Samsung do produce full-size refrigerators solely for storing kimchi. Another commenter said the blame lies with South Koreans for importing so much cheap Korean-style kimchi made in China. It's no secret here that roughly 90% of kimchi sold in restaurants comes pre-produced from China. Many on Chinese social media Weibo made a similar argument, saying it's their side dish because it's made in China. In Chinese restaurants, Korean-style kimchi is often served under the name paochai, only exacerbating the confusion. Others on Weibo said the name kimchi originally comes from the Chinese language. Walk around Seoul and you can still often spot traditional clay pots used to ferment kimchi. Kang Min-young is a motion graphic designer in the capital. She said the side dish is so ubiquitous here, she's never thought about what it means to her.
저에게 김치란
Kimchi is such a familiar part of my life. It's served as a side dish at every meal, and I can always find it around me. Many families have their own recipe handed down from generation to generation, so it's such a familiar staple in our lives.
But even the homemade stuff often contains cheaper, raw ingredients imported from China. South Korea imports roughly 10 times the amount of kimchi it exports, a fact that will likely only fuel more online debates over kimchi's origins, at least in China.
Now let's turn to a roundup of the latest news making waves in the entertainment world. Ira Spitzer caught up earlier with entertainment reporter Jodie McCallum on a number of topics, starting with a new law in South Korea allowing members of the hugely popular K-pop band BTS to postpone their mandatory military service. It comes the same week the group landed its 5th #1 album on the Billboard 200 chart with the album B.
So watch me bring the fire, set the night light.
So basically what's happened here is they've had a military postponement. So South Korea's parliament has passed a bill allowing BTS to delay their compulsory military service until they're 30. Now, the oldest member of BTS is Jin, who's turning 28. So that gives the band at least another 2 years together of creating world domination. They're actually all set to become millionaires, and they have made history this week in more ways than one. So I do think this is the correct decision, and BTS fans across the world, BTS Army, they're celebrating this. They're so happy about this.
Well, big news for K-pop fans there. And finally, Millie Bobby Brown, that's the 16-year-old who plays the character 11 on Stranger Things, has made a video talking about a bad experience with a fan who wanted to film a video with her. What can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. So Millie Bobby Brown shared this tearful video. You can see she's visibly upset on her Instagram story, and this was after an encounter with a fan.
I asked her, and she said, so I can't take a video of a human being? And I said, no, not when I said no. It just makes me upset when people try and push the boundary.
And so Millie Bobby Brown was shopping, and a fan approached her and asked her if she was Millie Bobby Brown, to which Millie Bobby Brown said, yes, this is me. And the fan actually asked Millie if she could video her. And Millie was a little bit uncomfortable with this, and she said, well, I'd rather we kind of just took a picture or something. I'd rather you didn't just film me, because I'm just kind of out shopping, just minding my own business. However, the fan proceeded to video her, and Millie got really upset by this and said to the fan, can't you just respect me as a human being? To which the fan apparently responded, well, can't I just film a human being? And it was just a bit of a tense altercation between the two of them. And she was really visibly upset on the video when she was talking about it, and she was just saying that, you know, sometimes fans do cross the boundaries.
Still trying to navigate this all, and it's still overwhelming. I will take a picture with you, but when you push the boundary and you try and fight me on it, I'm making this video to say you have to show more respect for others.
And I think we have to remember that these mega stars are human beings at the end of the day. She is only 16. She's one of the most followed teenagers in the world.
Jodie McCallum there with the latest entertainment news. Stay with us. After the break, we'll bring you the latest business and news headlines. And later in the show, we'll get the latest from Hong Kong following the jailing of well-known democracy activist Joshua Wong. Campaigners say they won't give up.
I think that this will get more people angrier. And one day we'll be on the street again and revenge.
Hong Kongers' idea and Hong Kongers' thought will never disappear only because Joshua Wong and Aga Chow get into jail, but we will fight till we achieve our goal.
But first, the latest news and traffic.